In the Final Fantasy VII universe, the Cetra, also known as the Ancient, are a race of people who are deeply spiritual and have a strong connection with the planet. On top of this, they seem to have innate abilities to control, or at the very least manipulate, the life stream or other components of the physical world. But by the time we reach the story of Final Fantasy VII, they're all but extinct, with only Ifalna and Aerith being known to us, and Aerith herself only being half ancient. Well, there are a lot of theories kicking around about other potential ancients, with characters like Bugenhagen and the Chocobo Sage being brought up often, but the main one, the one that's driven a lot of speculation and discussion over the years, is Marlene. And it's not without reason. There are a lot of things that are mysterious about her and have led people to believe that Marlene is in some way at least part ancient, like Aerith. A lot of this stems from similarities between Aerith and Marlene, not just aesthetically, but seemingly their abilities to sense things from the planet, with Marlene at numerous points reacting to things like the flower at the end of Remake, and the livestream at the end of the original game, and there are other examples of it. But Remake doubled down in a big way with Marlene, seemingly having some transference of memory or knowledge from Aerith when they're in 7th Heaven. Like I say, there are a lot of other small hints, such as the dog tags that Barrett wears for Marlene, which have got no date of birth or blood type on them, even though we should surely know these details, at least roughly. But what I want to do today is propose an alternative theory for this. One that not only explains a lot of the things that go on around Marlene, but could also explain things about other characters in the Final Fantasy VII universe, and potentially could have far-reaching implications. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy it, also please consider hitting the subscribe button so you don't miss any future Theory and Remake news videos, but let's go on with it. So the basic theory is that rather than a few people being survivors of the Cetra, all of the population of Gaia have varying degrees of Cetra DNA, and therefore Cetra abilities lie dormant within these people. Now, due to the varying levels of activation, so to speak, people may exhibit no powers whatsoever, whereas others may possess some additional power, or additional durability, or even abilities that some people in general don't have. And this in turn leads to moments like Marlene, where she shows certain moments of clarity and connection with the planet that other characters don't. That's the basic guts of the theory. But what we're going to do is we're going to dive a bit deeper, we're going to look at a few things, firstly that corroborate this possibility, and then we're going to look at things that we can infer if this theory is true. Now, the first one of these things that we can use to corroborate this theory potentially comes from the real world. The Mongolian Empire of the 12th and 14th century was the largest contiguous land empire in history, and it was second only to the British Empire in actual landmass. At its height, it stretched from the Sea of Japan to large parts of Eastern and even Central Europe. But that's not the point that we're looking at here. What we're looking at is the genetic legacy of the empire, and primarily of its founder, Genghis Khan. There have been several studies, some less reliable than others obviously, but the general estimate is that around 16 million people globally are in some way, shape or form descended from Genghis Khan's bloodline, i.e. they carry the same Y chromosomes and have a patrilineal link. Now this is a pretty insane number of people, and you wouldn't expect this many people to have a connected lineage with someone so far away, you know, in time. But the studies back up, you can look into it, it all kind of adds up, and yeah, there's even speculations that there's a few more people that were in that kind of area around in, you know, other people, because the way the Mongolians kind of subjugated and took over places, they just kind of did what they wanted basically, so they procreated a lot, let's put it that way. So yeah, it leads to, I believe the rough estimate is about 0.5% of the global population has some sort of connection to Genghis Khan's empire. What we're going to do is we're going to take this and transfer it back into the world of Final Fantasy VII. Now, if we assume we have a reasonably even split between Cetrans and normal humans, which we'll be coming back to shortly, trust me, and we also accept the possibility that these two races would have been able to procreate, something that we see with Professor Gast and Ifalna, then we can easily assume that there will have been people in the normal human, yet again, camp who are half Cetran, for example. And if we have this semi-mixed population, with at the very least more than one person who is half Cetran, potentially far more than that, but let's just say we've got a couple of people, even at that low level, after generations and generations, 2,000 years worth of generations, we'd be left with a massive amount of Gaia's population, potentially, who carry some degree of Cetran DNA. That's the first point. That's taking a real-world example for one possibility. The second possibility comes from in-game, and it actually has a bit more weight to it, if we're being completely honest. In the Calm flashback, when Sephiroth discovers the truth about his origin, he quotes directly to us from a research book into Jenova and the Cetra, and he says, "This planet originally belonged to the Cetra. Cetra was an itinerant race who would migrate in, settle the planet, then move on. At the end of their hard long journey, it was said they would find the Promised Land and supreme happiness. But those who disliked the journey appeared. They stopped their migrations, built shelters, and elected to lead an easier life. They took that which the Cetra and the planet had made without giving back one whit in return. Long ago, disaster struck the planet. Your ancestors escaped. They survived because they hid. The planet was saved by sacrificing the Cetra. After that, your ancestors continued to multiply." Now, if we believe this research is truthful and factual, then this suggests one of two things. It either suggests that, as we first expected from that first section, that it was a rough split, there was Cetran people and there was normal human people. And we already know that they are capable of procreation between the two races, so that's one possibility. But the other possibility is, this phrasing seems to suggest potentially that there were people within the Cetra who disliked the journey and stopped the migrations and built shelters, which suggests that we're not dealing with Cetrans and humans, but we're dealing with Cetrans and Cetrans. And due to the less nomadic Cetrans abandoning the traditions of the Cetra, they've lost the ability to connect with the planet over the years. Now, in this possibility, could this dormant DNA still be active in some people? And could this dormant DNA be activated by coming into contact with an active Cetran, so to speak? So yeah, we've got the two things there that could easily explain how certain people can exhibit Cetran-like abilities by stating that the DNA of the Cetra will have been dispersed throughout the population, be that through procreation between Cetrans and humans, or be that because the Cetrans and the humans are essentially all Cetrans, just with a large number of them, the human number of them, losing their abilities due to not continuing with how the Cetra live, and, the traditions of the Cetra. But now that we believe this theory, which we do, one of the two at least, what does it mean? What does it explain? Well, first off, I think it explains a lot of the Marlene-related things, especially like her being able to connect with Aerith and her seemingly becoming more aware of her abilities and more able to use those abilities after she's met Aerith. She's come into contact with a Cetra who has been using her abilities and who does know. By coming into contact with Aerith, it's kind of activated her abilities in a way. The only thing it doesn't explain is the dog tags, but that just could be Barrett being a complete idiot, who knows. But beyond that, it could explain a lot more about the world of Final Fantasy VII. If we find people who have got more of the active Cetran DNA, these people could be the people who come close to being soldier, or maybe who fill the third and second class soldier ranks. Whereas then you come to people like Zack, Cloud, and even Genesis, Angeal, and Sephiroth. These people could have a higher percentage of this active DNA, and therefore they become even stronger, filling out the ranks of Soldier First Class. I mean, can you point to any other characters who might be showing higher levels of power due to the fact that they have Cetran DNA? There are so many characters who've got strange abilities in this world, and this Cetran DNA being dispersed throughout the population could explain a lot of it. I mean, you've got people like Tifa, like Sid, like Barrett, the rest of the party. Anyone who's got an affinity for using materia to a reasonably high level could have this higher percentage of active Cetran DNA. Vincent could potentially be the same sort of level as like your Sephiroths and your Angeals and your Zax, and that's why he mutated in such a specific way due to the testing that was done on him, and why he's able to survive all of the things going on within like the proto-materia and chaos. And the people that didn't survive these experimentations done by Shinra, the ones who died or, even worse, turned into grotesque monstrosities, they probably had very little Cetran ability or durability or anything like that, and so the Mako and Genova cells took over their bodies and had free reign. It leaves open a lot of possibilities, and I think that the theory makes sense either way. It could be one way or another. It could be that we are dealing with everyone's a Cetran really, just to varying degrees, or it could be that Cetran DNA has spread throughout the human population of Gaia, and this has led to certain people who have more or certain people who have less. You know, there's differences between those people. And especially given Sephiroth's speech, it definitely lends a lot to it. But yeah, the best thing is that we should get this scene quite early on in Remake, in Part 2. Hopefully we'll get more details and we'll get a more up-to-date version of this scene, and when we do get that, it'll indicate what the developers are going for. Possibly they could clarify something, they could, you know what I mean? It all relies on what this scene looks like in the Khan flashback in Remake Part 2. That's enough from me. What do you think? Do you agree with this theory? Do you have a different idea? Can you point to any other characters, like I say, who might be showing higher levels of power due to this Cetran DNA that could be dispersed throughout the population of Gaia? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Please do drop a like on the video and subscribe for future content if you enjoyed this video. But more importantly than anything, have a great day.